We are going to have a look at the final of the Speed Chess Championship, and it's a fantastic matchup between the two best players in the world of online chess. It's Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru Nakamura. And as you know, the Speed Chess Championship is divided into three sections. It starts with section of Blitz, 5 minutes plus a 1 second increment. Then they move on to the 3+1, and at the end it's the 1+1, the bullet section. And it's a very close match. We are going to have a look at the final game of the bullet section, because at the start in the 5+1, Magnus was leading with 5 against 4. Then Hikaru bounced back to score an extra win in the 3+1. So they entered the bullet section with an even score, 9-9. And then in the final, Magnus took the lead. He's 1 point up, and that means that Hikaru is in a must-win situation with the black pieces. Let's have a look what happened in this game, because it's absolutely dramatic and you don't want to miss it. Magnus plays 1 e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and he wants to play in a very solid way in the bullet section. I'm not sure it's really possible to play solid. I mean, even if you choose the most solid line in general, it can explode anytime in bullet, of course. But of course, this symmetrical approach with the Scotch for knights, for instance, if black goes here for the move knight f6, there are a lot of very dry, drawish positions. So Hikaru plays g6, d4, pawn takes d4, knight takes, bishop g7. So we have a nice bishop on this diagonal, bishop e3, knight g e7, queen d2, d6, and white castles queenside. And in fact, around this point, white is already having a very pleasant position with ideas of launching a pawn storm with f3, h4, h5. It's a very typical plan. So for that reason, black doesn't really want to run into that attack, and instead decides not to castle and plays here the move h6. It's another pawn move, doesn't really contribute to black's development, but at least it gives a game. And white doesn't have any quick ideas of ever playing the bishop to h6. So white goes bishop e2, bishop e6, and here, interestingly, Magnus having this situation where a draw guarantees the match victory, he plays very solid with rook h e1. But I want to point out the following idea, which is remarkable, as knight takes e6 is already really strong. The idea is that after f takes e6, you're going to attack the pawn with your bishop. Now after queen d7, almost a killer move here is the move knight d5. And obviously the knight cannot be taken because of the pin. And well, there are all sorts of ideas here for white, including to take on e6. And after queen takes e6, knight takes c7, you have this knight for when you're threatening to win the queen. So, of course, not easy to spot in bullet chess. But after rook h e1, white is also still in good shape. But after queen d7, knight takes c6. Well, there are various ways of recapturing. Don't take with the queen because of bishop b5. You're losing your best piece. If you take with the b pawn, then white's going to follow up with a move like f4, and it's still quite a nice position. So Hikaru decided to take with the knight, but now the knight comes into to d5. Nice move, with the point that maybe black was planning to castle queenside, but then bishop b5 is a very unpleasant pin with ideas to take, and you cannot really recapture with the queen because of another knight fork. Bishop on e3 attacks the pawn on a7. So instead of castling, black has to go for a6 to prevent that bishop from coming to b5. White goes for the move f4, castling queenside, and now the bishop comes to f3. So now we have position with kings castled on the same side. White now has a nice space advantage in the center with pawns on e4 and f4 being supported by the bishops and also the major pieces. So I absolutely like white's prospects in this case. King b8, white goes king b1, rook h e8, both sides having their pieces well placed. And now, nice move, bishop f2. I think it's quite a useful move with ideas sometimes of either going bishop h4 to attack the rook on d8, but also there are plans to go queen e3 and set up a battery of queen and bishop. Rook c8, was played to anticipate that move bishop h4. Bishop h4 was played anyway, but still I think bishop could have stayed on f2 and queen e3 with ideas even of going knight b4, trying to deflect the main defender of the a7 square. It looks quite dangerous for black, but still it's bullet. There's no time to calculate. It's all about the speed of your moves. Bishop h4 was played, and here we see that white is having ideas of installing a minor piece on f6, but Hikaru is first here. Goes for the move knight d4. Excellent counter move, as the knight is well supported by the bishop. And now after knight f6, which is not a great move, it's clear that Magnus overlooked something. Bishop takes, knight takes f3, g takes f3. Looks like an even position considering white's lead in the match. Very understandable, but he missed. Bishop takes a2. After king takes a2, it's queen e6 check. Double attack, and black regains the piece and is a pawn up. Look at these pawns, they're also not looking great. So instead of taking the bishop on a2, king c1 was played, but now the bishop goes back. And well, here we see the pawn on a2 is just missed. But it's positioned with all the best pieces still on the board, with queens, rooks and opposite colored bishops. White goes h4, queen b5, so the queen is looking for ways to join the action on the queen side. Queen to d3. White wants to get rid of the queens to try to save an inferior queenless middle game. Queen a5 with plans of coming to a1 probably, but after queen c3, queens are being exchanged again. At least the offer has been made by white. Queen h5. So, well, the pawns are still defended, but at least there are some sort of control, and white needs to keep them protected. b3. So white wants to bring the king to b2, and black could have done the same with moves like b6, king b7. You're slightly improving your position and intends to grab some space on the queen side, but instead king to a8. Played king b2, queen b5 back. It's also clear that Hikaru is not entirely sure what he wants to do. And now, look at this move, h5. That's a remarkable move. I mean, you're just sacrificing your pawn, but g takes h5 is not great. White can always play f5 after that. You can take with the queen. And now Magnus plays the move rook h1. He wants to win back the pawn on h6. Now there's a very instructive computer line, which is impossible to calculate, but I want to show it to you. f5 can be played anyway. After g takes f5, because the bishop was on the threat, now you go rook h1. The queen can only go back to g6. You put the other rook on g1. So you hit the queen, queen goes back, now you go rook g7, you're forcing the queen to go into the corner, you take that pawn on f5, black recaptures, and now with the move rook g5, you're attacking the queen as well as the bishop. Queen has to go back to h7 to support that bishop, and after rook g7, white forces a draw. This would have been an absolutely insane way to clinch the match victory, but I think it's a very instructive line. Anyway, rook h1 was played, but now the queen will come back to b5. Rook takes h6. Black has to give back that pawn. And now a5 is played. Rook g1, b6. Black consolidates its position on the queen side. The king will come to b7 very soon. Rook g5 first, attacking the queen. And now black plays c5. And here you can see that the rooks are somewhat out of play, and black has plans of going, let's say, king b7, maybe a4, maybe c4, maybe bring a rook over to the open file. Queen d3 could be played here, offering the exchange of queens once again, but rook h2 was played instead, bringing the rook back into defense. a4, rook d2, a takes b3, c takes b3, and now king to b7. Fantastic move. The rook is coming over to the a file. Rook takes d6. Black is just giving away that pawn. Rook will come to a8 anyway. And now look, things are heating up. f5 was played. Now you're attacking the bishop on f5. But what happens if you just take that pawn and after e takes f5? This was all not played in the game, but it's an instructive line. Both players missed. That bishop takes b3 finishes the game here. Because if you take the bishop, there's rook e2 check. The king got to keep in touch with the queen, but now it's rook e3 and the queen is lost. So that's a very convincing line missed by both players. Instead, After f5, look what Hikaru did. He played here queen f1. Very nice move. After f takes e6, there are various options. Hikaru has just a forcing sequence of moves, which he had to calculate. He had more than enough time here, around 30 seconds. In a bullet game, that's eternity. You have time to blitz out your moves instantly in the opening, but he should have sensed this is the critical moment. He could have calculated this line. Queen a1 check, king c2, rook a2 check, forcing the king to go to d3. Now it's queen d3, king e3. You can give another check on e2 even, king f4, and then you capture the rook on d6 with check. It's a purely forcing sequence of moves, which is totally winning for black. Didn't happen. Instead, he went for the move rook a1. And rook a1 is another very spectacular move, but it doesn't come with check. And you know, these guys, they understand the principle of forcing moves. And with a bit of time, Magnus would have definitely found here rook takes b6. It's the crushing move. After king takes b6, queen takes c5. Black's king is wide open. The rook will come over. You have a number of checks. The bishop will come with a check either to d4 or e5 at some point. This is game over. This could just have been played, but it was not found. I mean, Magnus was feeling, okay, I have to defend here. Queen b1 is a threat, so he didn't look for that forcing move. He played queen c2, but that's a huge blunder. And here, Nakamura, man, what did you do? You could have spent a little bit more time and find the just forcing mate in a few moves. I mean, it's unbelievable that he just didn't play rook a2. After king takes a2, rook a8 check, king b2. The idea is there is queen a1 with checkmate and the king can't go anywhere. After rook a2, just it's clear that otherwise you lose the queen. So very bizarre finish of that game, but it gets even more strange after this. Both sides missing their chances. After queen c2, rook a2 not played, rook e to a8, and now still rook takes b6 would have been a nice way to win the match. But there followed rook d7 check, also interesting move. Where is the king going? Well, if you go to b8, then the move queen h2 is there, with the plan that after king c8 it's queen c7 with checkmate. Nice way of getting the white queen into the attack. Of course, after king c8 there's also rook takes c5, and after b takes c5, queen takes c5 is going to be checkmate as well. Then if you play king to a6, then the simple continuation is to play queen c4 check. And you're forcing the exchange of queens. After queen takes, b takes, white is just having an extra piece and should be able to convert without any problems. Instead, there followed king c6. And now, Magnus, he needs to do something. Otherwise, he will lose his queen or getting checkmated. He sacrificed the rook on c5. That's rook sacrifice number 1. After b takes c5, there's nothing else black can do. Rook sacrifice number 2 follows immediately. Rook c7, king takes, queen takes c5, check, your 2 rooks down. King b7, queen d5, king b8 was played. And here after bishop e5, the players agreed to a draw. There's no way black can escape from these checks. In case of king a7, bishop d4 is a nice repetition of moves. But the funny thing is here, the players agreed to a draw because it was match victory for Magnus. He wins the match 13.5, 12.5. Amazing finish. But let me show you what could have happened at the end. I mean, king a7 can be played, bishop d4, king b8. Indeed, bishop e5 is a repetition of moves, but queen to d6 check is going to lead to mate. After king b7, it's queen d7 check. If you go back to b8, then it's bishop e5. Nice mating pattern with queen and bishop. If the king goes to a6, then you play queen c6, forcing the king to go to a5, and this bishop c3. Had Magnus been in a must-win situation, he would have definitely found it. But in a bullet game, he saw that at least this is going to lead to a draw. So this is the way how Magnus managed to win these Speed Chess Championships. Absolutely insane, dramatic final game of their match. And I hope you enjoyed it as well. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you would like to see more exciting games between these two guys and much more. See you soon again. Bye bye.